Recording, Clever.
Okay.
Hi, welcome to January 2021. How else can help security teams? This is, I think, the fourth session we're doing on this, and it's kind of taking shape. And we're going to continue directly from the session we did yesterday, which is also recorded. And basically, we got Grant, and I think Vandana, if she's not in, she's joining in a second, as OWASP board members. We also got Sam, chapter leader from the UK and a project leader of a project which I can't remember the name. And we're going to go through kind of almost where we ended last night or yesterday, which is basically this really cool. So I was kind of wanted to continue the conversation on the Wayfinder. Right?
Because yes, this is why we have Spiros on the call as well. So he's one of the project leaders of the project integration standards. And they were kind of trying to do a similar exercise, just called it differently. Rather than a map, they called it a Wayfinder. So how do people find their way around hundreds and hundreds of OWASP projects and find projects which are specific to a particular step in the cycle? In the SDLC.
Yeah, because just for reference, what we've been doing here is sort of this idea of mapping, right? The projects that OWASP has with the areas that it fits in this case, test, codes, monitor, and we kind of use this sort of DevOps kind of flow. And then, we actually found the Wayfinder a bit later on. We're already done a lot of mappings on here. And again, the idea is just to almost have a simple set of metadata that if you're looking for something, you can kind of find it. And it's quite interesting that even the OWASP, even experienced, or say OWASP leaders or members that are on the call, I think all of us have been in a place where we go, wow, I didn't know that project existed. So clearly there's a kind of a big gap here. And I actually think, Grant, the idea is almost maybe on this, over-engineer this too much, where what we really want is something that we can literally just put on the OWASP homepage sooner rather than later. Right?
Yep. No, and I think
there, and that might be the good updates. I think that's maybe we just adopt that project. Somebody want to make a Grant?
Sorry, there's a dog barking in the background here.
Sorry. Oh, you're going to make a comment? Or?
Yeah, just that Spiros is actually on the call, so maybe we should bring him in to carry on the discussion around how we can integrate what we're doing here with an existing project that's already doing something.
Yep, absolutely, right? And I think that's, hey, man. Cool. So do you want to kind of maybe, just walk us through your thinking on this very, very quickly? It's kind of obvious from here, right? But just, sort of give us where you are and what's the next steps and where you already see some synergies.
Yeah, sounds good. So this project was created after, I think, Ellie. Anyway, some other OWASP contributor posted on some mailing list asking for how we can bring different projects together. And this was kind of the proof of concept. So we sat down and we figured, what can we do in a limited amount of time without any automation, completely manual, right? And the easiest thing was to go on draw.io and make a basic diagram that vaguely maps to some vague SDLC. And we found several OWASP projects, actually so many that we had to select just a few of them. And it was surprisingly easy. Then the next step on this is an effort to make it self-service. So now we have some literal spreadsheets on Google Sheets that you can submit your own links to, and there is a Lambda function, AWS Lambda function, that will read these spreadsheets and create some YAML files with these links. So far, we've used them to map, and it's not only for OWASP things, it's general for security, links between security things. It doesn't, there is no, for now, there is no connection between what these things are. And we've used it so far to map specific subsections of security standards. But the next version of this project, coming in, I guess, the first half of 2021, so I guess sometime starting March, is to define the relationships, right? So far, we want to do things like, in your requirement states, you can use SKF to do X, and having these links, I hope, will help. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I missed one little thing. So you're saying on the next phase of the project, it's still going to be OWASP specific, or
So
you're going to branch out to other parts of?
So it is, so yes and no. It is, we're using OWASP as a kind of test data set, because OWASP has a lot more structure than random InfoSec things, and random InfoSec tools and standards and everything. So, but eventually we would like to branch out from OWASP. But the beginning of the data set, and until it can get wider adoption, is gonna be OWASP.
So Dinis, the intention of this project originally was, like one of the queries that you had during one of the previous sessions. I'm running Zap and I'm running Defect Dojo. They're both OWASP projects. I should just be able to install them and they should talk to each other. So this project is talking about the integrations between various OWASP tools. But the very first step of integrating tools is to figure out what tools we have and where they fit into the cycle. So that's what this first mapping was about. So I believe that the project intends to help projects find ways of integrating with each other, find some sort of standards for tools that work together to integrate together. But the first step is this, and obviously this will be expanded to include other tools that work with Zap or work with whatever OWASP project tools that are on this list.
Exactly.
But I don't think there'll ever be this is all of the things in the whole planet that is to do with AppSec that is all connected somehow, because that's a life's work.
Exactly. I mean, ideally, like there is an ideal world where this would happen. Of course, it's never exactly going to happen, but this is kind of the ideal world. Similar to, as in an ideal world, Zap would find every single bug in a web application, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think the line of within OWASP and outside of OWASP, right? I think is an important line, and that's where maybe it's just good to clarify, right? Because I feel that there's a lot of value, and I think OWASP, as you can see here, has enough of an ecosystem, right? That there's a lot of value to say, just show me what exists within this environment. Now, I'll give you a good example, right? We're now using a lot of stuff on Kubernetes, right? And if you guys are using Kubernetes, you're going to be using a lot of stuff from the Cloud Foundation, right? Because the Cloud Foundation has a great example of projects and how they've done it. And we kind of got to the point where we wanted to say, if you're going to pick a project or a solution, go there first, right? Go there first, because there's already a sort of a standard, a quality, an integration that they're pushing down, right? But also an understanding what are the rules of the game, right? In terms of what is being used. So I think there's value in adding another layer on this, which is the commercial. Basically what we're saying is there's another 2 layers almost. There's another open source layer and another commercial layer, right? Like what are the commercial applications that do this, and what are the the commercial, also the open source projects that do that, and maybe SaaS services. But I feel that at least the one that, for example, I think I'm interested in at the moment is literally just within the OWASP ecosystem.
Yes. And this can be, and that this is why I'm saying that this is most likely, like the first version of this will definitely have only OWASP, because OWASP is one of the better defined data sets / ecosystems out there, right?
Yeah.
It is really hard, like adding the extra layers involves a lot of manual work that, let's face it, very few of us have time to do.
I think it's just on OWASP, man. It's massive, right? Because remember that we need to map every single project, right?
Yes.
So, but
yeah,
it means that the name, right, in a way, it should be something related to OWASP, right? You know, this at least the first version should almost be the OWASP ecosystem, and I feel that there's value on this to replace, or at least to augment, you know, even like just the first here, right, the homepage of this.
Yeah.
You know, this is very hard to consume, right? This list of projects doesn't really tell me, you know, apart from me opening up, you know, 20 tabs on my computer, right? You know, I get no information here. Okay, maybe it depends to check and track, give a clue on the name, right? But it's almost like what we want is to start to basically to present something like this, some visualizations that show, you know, this is the ecosystem, and this is the connection of the tools that we have.
Yeah, I agree. These like, yes, this makes sense. However, in its current form, this is manually maintained. So by definition, the second you finish working on it, it is already obsolete, right?
Yeah, and that's why that conversation that we were having, which was to create, you know, and it's funny because I think we arrive at the same conclusion, right? Ironically, I think that we were talking before you joined, was your idea is to put a JSON file or YAML file in the repo of the project, right?
Yes, exactly. And this is the next version, right? We currently have these mappings that are manual. The next version is to create mappings that are automated and scraped from some data set, right? And the data set can be the OWASP organization GitHub repo plus a list of other GitHub repos that have been like committed to a file, right?
Yeah. Where's the source code of that Lambda function that you were saying?
So if you go to GitHub to the project's GitHub, yeah, should say scripts somewhere. Yeah, no, go. Sorry. Yes.
This is the web page for the project, not the actual.
Yeah.
Let me give you a link.
Yeah, because the link is not here. Like, okay, so
yeah.
It should actually be on the right hand side there. There should be a link to the project GitHub.
Yeah.
So they need to update their metadata on the project page.
Yeah.
See, let's see how quickly I can create a pull request for that.
So I'm gonna post it on the chat in this chat here.
Okay. This one here, secure integration system.
Yeah. I haven't. I've developed a bunch of it under my private GitHub. So private fork, mostly because of permissions.
Yep.
I did not want to give like OWASP access to my personal AWS. That could get expensive.
Yeah, I think who was Grando? I think it was Andrew who was talking about that one of the services that OWASP will provide is also the access to AWS, right?
Yeah. So there is plenty of compute that OWASP has access to. But you're right. You don't want everybody in OWASP being able to kick off things in your AWS account. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. So you got it here, right? So this is where you got. Okay. This is where you have the. the scripts and the Lambda function and that stuff. Very cool. So yeah, so at the moment, yeah, so you already got this this Lambda function here that's basically what we want to leverage, right? So you want to leverage this workflow, because that's what scales, right? You want this thing that runs regularly, that scrapes every single page and then builds the graph from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can only agree. Then an important project like DSEM wouldn't be missed in that overview.
Yep. But by the way, you might want to check out this project from the OWASP security bot. Is on AWS. I'll put the link in there, right? There's already a large number of wrappers around Boto-free that makes Boto-free much easier to use. So you might want to play around with this API.
Oh, that's it.
Just saying that it just simplifies a lot of this code. You don't have to do, because what you're doing here is you're doing wrappers around Boto-free, right?
Yeah.
Right, cool. Okay, so I think what we're basically saying is that the architecture for this is basically we're going to start adding YAML files to that OWASP to the web page repos, right, of the projects, right, which is what you have there, and then we're going to basically scrape that to basically grab the kind of the metadata about the projects to basically to create that graph programmatically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, cool.
And then use information from the YAML files to populate the graph and possibly add even more information, because the graph at its current state is quite basic, right? It's just a link to the project.
Yeah.
Ideally, we would want to have verbs in it. So if you move down on the page and show the graph again,
yeah.
Ideally, we want to have verbs in it, right? So things like, for example, in operation, what does mod security CRS exactly do, right? So you can say that mod security, like pretty much like firewalls operations, right? So, and things like small hints like that can help with what is each project. Because, for example, I'm not familiar with security wrap. I don't really know what it does, right? If I had like a one word or like a label or a verb on it, I might be more tempted to click on it.
Well, what we need is another layer down, right, on the metadata, right? So, for example, like mod security should be under a WAF label, right? Because literally that's what it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And then so now one question I had for you, and you done a bit of thinking. You picked these things up. We were using this DevOps kind of flow, right?
Yep.
Like, do you think it's worth revisiting, these top level items, or we should try to go with the ones you have here already?
So that's a good question. I started from the DevOps items. If you like compare them, they mention like they have similar names.
Yeah.
But I had to add a couple of more things. Namely, if I remember correctly, metrics, policy gap evaluation, and culture building, because they don't exist in the DevOps, and I find them important, right?
Yeah.
Because
Why don't they exist in DevOps?
Sorry, say again.
Why doesn't culture doesn't exist in DevOps? I would say that is one of the core pillars.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but where is it on the DevOps like cycle, right?
So yeah, it is a core concept, a core part of DevOps. DevOps isn't DevOps without culture, but it isn't actually a stage of the process, right? It's not one of the cycling stages. It's just an aspect of DevOps itself. So I guess you can't really map some things to that cycle because it should be happening all the time. Culture should be happening all the time.
Yeah. Well,
But-
like, which project would you link to culture?
So the things that are currently linked there under culture are things like SAM, ASVS, MASVS, Security Champions Playbook. Those things I would, on the DevOps cycle, probably put if you go back to the DevOps cycle,
Yeah.
I'd probably put that into the assess area.
Yep.
Yeah, that could be.
Somewhere between assess and train, because there's training security champions, there's assessing how well the team is performing against SAM.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Last time we put it here, right? And I think what's really interesting about this is this conversation is really useful, right? Like literally just having this debate and having this sort of view from almost the experts, right? Or the people who have a bit more experience to say you should go on that or that bucket, because all of that is helping whoever comes along and say, you know, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that.
One question regarding this: why can't we have something around it saying this is the culture part? It's part of everything. So we have the cycle, and in addition, something around it.
Yeah, but I think the interesting point is like this culture, you know, actually, you know, is there a project that addresses culture? Like if we had a OWASP project who talks about, you know, security culture, right? Then it would be an interesting one. But if you look at this, security champions playbook, SAM, ASVS, and you know, and MAS, right? The mobile security, they all fit in different areas here, right? And actually, you also take into account that the logic here is that there isn't a one-to-one mapping between one tool or one guide and one stage.
But you can see that even on the view that was presented there, right? If you look at the ASVS, it appears both under policy gap evaluation as well as under process.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And in requirements.
And in requirements, yeah.
Yeah, but actually that's kind of the outlier, right? Because the reality is when you look at, for example, when we were looking at it, right? Just about everyone had more than one mapping, right?
Yeah.
Literally.
I know a project which has just one mapping, and that is culture. That is the security pins project. It doesn't match to anything else in culture.
Which one?
Which project?
The so-called security pins project.
It was recently promoted, I think.
Oh, right.
That wouldn't match to other things because it's not a code project and it doesn't cover the whole more. You know, Sam, I agree it fits to a lot of different categories, but that doesn't fit to anything else.
Not even maybe training?
Yeah, that depends on the point of view, I would say. Maybe it could be also training, yes.
Yeah.
So this is why, I mean, we grabbed something, and this DevOps 8 or infinity symbol, I found it to be a really amazing version of the DevOps symbol because it covers a lot more aspects than some of the others I've seen. I actually shamelessly stole this from Secure Code Warrior and then asked them if I could use it. And because I was presenting at one of their conferences, they said, sure. So there we go. It's now OWASP property as part of a bunch of OWASP stuff.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to map to these specific things. And if there are things that are missing from here, like culture, and it's something we feel that a particular project does map strongly to, there's no reason we can't add a culture element to the summary.
Yeah, correct. And I guess we look at this, right? Like operational requirements, design, implementation, verification, policy gap evaluation, metrics, you know, because I feel like it would be good if we can't agree, you know, it's also okay, but I think it would be interesting to see that for the next phase, right? And maybe coming back a month from now, seeing if there's any progress, it would be good that we would say, let's try to map this to a set of base sort of elements. And this is one of them, right? And this is another one. But I feel that we need to go down a level. And the other thing I will do, I'll say here is that, you know, you almost went implementation, docs, dependencies, and secure libraries. But is this supposed to be one leads to the other, or are they all part of implementation? It's just a visualization that was done this way.
They're all part of the implementation. I tried doing different arrows from implementation, but it got crowded really quickly. So that's why I added like just multiple arrows one after the other.
Yeah, got it.
Similar to verification, where you have guides, tools, frameworks, and vulnerability management, right?
Yeah. So all you're saying is that you got verification that has verification guides, verification tools, verification frameworks, verifications, vulnerability management.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, because I feel that the next step for this is to create that, almost that graph, right? That graph view, which can be done in multiple ways, right?
Yeah.
You can do it with JS, you can do it Neo4j. Anybody has experience with Neo4j, but you kind of want to move this. In fact, anybody has any thoughts on what would be a good graph technology to do this?
Neo4j, like personally, Neo4j is like the default thing for this, like the de facto thing for this. It supports everything you need, and maybe and it's interactive, right? You can like zoom in, find, click on things to find more information. It makes more sense than any other static graph.
Yeah. Now the question is, where do you store the data natively? My challenge with Neo4j in the past is that I found that Neo4j is good to visualize, is not good to store data.
So yeah, that's a good argument. You can store the data almost anywhere. Can be a simple S3 bucket, and the having the advantages of an S3 bucket is that you can have your own visualization with Neo4j, but anyone else can have any other visualization on the same data, right?
Yeah.
It's almost as an API. So you can do that there, or even a simple GitHub IO page that is automatically updated.
Yeah, because that's kind of what we want, right? We almost want take your Lambda function. The Lambda function probably puts all the data into an S3 bucket, and at the same time, or maybe triggers another Lambda function that will then populate a Neo4j database with the latest version of the data.
Yeah.
Now, Grant, are you saying that we have OWASP servers that we could use to host this thing on AWS?
Well, we have an OWASP AWS account. I don't know if you'd want to have servers. I mean, you could have an S3 bucket and some Lambda. Would you want to actually run servers?
Well, the problem with Neo4j, right, is that it does require a server, right? Actually, they probably have a hosted service these days, but I'm just thinking from a practicality point of view, if we want to do Neo4j, we're going to need a live server that we can send the data and you can query it.
Well, I'm sure we can set that up. It's just a matter of getting Harold involved in this, right? It's
yeah. So my other preference, Spyros, is to actually pump all the data to Elasticsearch, and then you almost query to Elasticsearch.
That it is a good alternative. I think that as a person, I'm against having physical servers for open source projects because they tend to not be updated as often. And I would hate for an OWASP project hosted on an OWASP server to be out of updates and get hacked. That would be ironic. So perhaps
AWS has managed Elastic service.
Does it? Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yeah, you can run manage Elastic service on AWS. We could also use Elastic Cloud, but I'm trying to just limit the complexity here, right? Because if AWS already has so OWASP already has an AWS account, right? Then it's easier to just say, can you just start two servers, an Elastic server and an Neo4j server? And just to clarify, when I mean you pump it to Elastic, it's almost like you take the raw data, you pump it to Elastic, then you write queries and you send it to other places. But Elastic is a much more powerful way to query data. Even if you put data in Neo4j, Neo4j is mainly for visualization.
Yes.
But Elastic becomes almost a repository for that. So Grant, can you help with this, right? We drop a note to Harold, but can you just help with this to say that what we need is just a very simple Elastic server. It doesn't need to be very big, right? Almost doesn't need to have any redundancy, just one elastic server. And then we can start to play around with the idea of creating the YAML files and then setting, actually probably JSON, setting the JSON files to Elasticsearch, and then taking that data and trying to visualize it in Neo4j. And we can use the data that we have here and here to do the first set of mappings.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat to Harold about getting some additional resources to run this. And what we need to do is then try and turn our now PowerPoint presentation into JSON for each of those projects.
Yeah.
Should be relatively easy.
I made a suggestion, and Spiros, let me know what you think, to actually use JSON natively instead of YAML, because JSON is easy to import. Or actually depends, right? Like to be in Python, we can do either, right?
So yeah, JSON is a superset. No, YAML is a superset of JSON, if memory serves. And we went with YAML because it's supposed to be slightly easier to write for humans, right?
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely easier to read for humans.
Yeah.
We don't like brackets. Humans are terrible with brackets. Braces.
Yes. So that's why we used YAML, and because a lot of these mappings will be manual and manually written by humans, I thought it would be easier to like get people to just stick a YAML file in their repositories, right?
Okay.
So,
let's go with that then. Yeah.
So let's get YAML output from our presentation. I'll chat to Harold about getting some compute to do this, and whether that's an Elastic server or however else, we'll figure it out. Make sure that the data is available for querying.
Yeah, give me like maybe 2 weekends to run some experiments with some graph databases.
Yeah.
I see Amazon has also Neptune, which is native.
No, we don't need to go there, man.
Okay. Okay, cool. Then give me like, a couple of weekends to run some experiments, and Grant, I'll talk to you and Harold very soon.
Cool, perfect.
With exactly what is needed.
Yeah. Yeah, and then do you have a channel in the Slack, in the OWASP Slack?
Yes, let me find it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, can you tag me in there? And for the crowd watching, right? And this is a great project to be involved if you want to learn about or be involved about graph databases. This is almost like the perfect mini project that if you want to get your head around creating graph databases, this is a great one.
That's a fantastic way to get involved with OWASP projects as a whole, because you'll learn a whole bunch about projects as you do it.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's the elevator pitch, right? To get resources.
So Spiros, we've now just helped you sell your project to the masses.
Thank you, guys. So the channel is project integration, project-integration in OWASP Slack.
Actually, let me just open it up, right? Because I should be able to open it up here, right? So you just invited me there. What do you call it? Project. So what is it called?
Project integration. No, it's not on this list.
It is not on this list. It's a
you've got, if you just scroll up slightly, Dinis,
no,
you're actually in the.
I'm just trying to find the Slack channel. What?
Oh, you're not sharing your screen. You're just sharing the browser.
Yeah. Oh, project integration. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool. Okay, found it.
Yeah, I think Dida just tagged you there. You should be able to connect, guys.
Cool. Yeah, I was just trying to open up here. Cool. Yeah, so this is the hopefully open up. What the hell? Now continue browsing. Yeah, this is the one, right? Cool. Right, so there you go. I'm going to join in on this one, right? And let's continue here, right? I'll add the link here to the presentation.
Thank you. And
Cool.
thanks for promoting this.
That's a good plan, right?
Uh-huh.
So we Yeah, so if you start putting some information that you have, right, on there, and your thoughts, we can then use this channel to start swapping ideas and to see, and maybe, you know, come back a month from now and actually do a session focus on this project. And OWASP, I actually like the name, and OWASP project integration. I think that should be the name of your project.
Yeah.
Just a recommendation.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll discuss this with the other two leaders, and it is a good idea. We'll probably adopt it.
Version 1, right? And what's interesting about this project, right? It actually goes to something I've talked several times about, which is we need a very simple graph database that at the moment we don't have. In fact, I played around with the idea of creating a serverless graph database that was good for this kind of stuff. But at the moment, we either have massive heavyweight graph database like Neptune and some others, right? Then we have things like Neo4j, which is still super heavyweight. And in fact, the reason why we tend to use Jira as a graph database, because I almost need something in the middle. And this is a good example of you almost need a YAML-based graph database, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And kind of that's it, right? So YAML-based, you query using Python, you create visualizations. Have you used Jupyter Notebooks before?
Yes, I have. Yeah, we use it in my day job as well.
Yeah, because that's then the other way to do it, right? So the other thing to do here is, and I think Jupyter Notebooks will be really good. Grant, do you know who else is using Jupyter Notebooks at OWASP?
I think there's a bunch of projects that make use of Jupyter Notebooks.
Yeah, it would be good to get maybe that knowledge too, because this is also the kind of thing where this data, once you get the data in a query, it's actually going to be easy to query in a notebook format than even on a web page, because actually not only you can rerun it and get live data, the notebooks will allow you to use even some of the visualizations.
And you're storing your copy of data locally when you're working on it, so it's easy.
Well, it depends actually how you run it, but yeah, in most cases, yes. So, by the way, I've used this visualization thingy, Paris, this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is usually where I tend to arrive, either this or PlanTML to create some of the graphs programmatically, which is basically, you know, graph viz, right? PlanTML is dots. So, but the network view here is really powerful to create, you know, really, really integrated sort of visualization when we get more data, because all of this is like HTML5, so you can actually manipulate and render stuff and add all sorts of things. It's kind of, I think, you will need a bit of that zoom in and zoom out. So you get a lot of value from Neo4j, but unless Neo4j changed their UI in the last couple of months, it becomes very limited very fast.
I see. I will take a look at this. I didn't know about it. That's why I said yeah, that's one of the reasons I preferred Neo4j. But yeah, this looks cool.
Yeah, no, this is very powerful. I've used lots of visualizations using this, and it's really good for the number of nodes that we have. It's more than enough, right? It's kind of like I view it as the next level of Neo4j visualization.
I see. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Well, man, looks like we actually have a plan.
Who would have thought? I'm really glad with this.
This is good, right? So look, I think the next step is let's collaborate. Let's actually, Grant, maybe on that spirit, right, of having OWASP add values to projects, right? I think what would be really cool is to do almost like a RFD, request for developers, right? Where we can basically go and saying, hey, if there's a bunch of devs out there that want to be involved in AppSec, want to learn about graphing, actually want to learn about OWASP projects, this is a great project to do. And then just think about how we can amplify that, what's the channels, what's the things, because, again, OWASP has lots of coverage, right? And even the idea that, on chapters, maybe the next time a chapter, has a meeting, they can put one slide that's saying, hey, Actually, I'm thinking about you, Sam. Next time, Sam always does a great sales speech for OWASP, right? So let's start do some recruitment for projects, right? Saying, hey, look, here's a project, here's some tasks, here's a cool thing to do. You get to learn a lot about OWASP, and you get to do some graph databases, which is super important. And then we try to attract some devs to this.
Yeah,
right?
definitely, because we kind of do a project spotlight at every single chapter meeting.
That's a good place to start. Vanda and I are doing the OWASP spotlight on the integration project. Would be a nice way to get it public out there.
Yep. Sounds good. Cool stuff.
Wow. I did not expect that much.
Yeah, so the project spotlight is just a 10-minute video with Vandana Cruz, so it would be good to introduce the project to everyone.
Yeah, that would be great.
And the other thing that I think is interesting, right, is for the guys on the call, right, and maybe seeing this, right, is that this is how OWASP projects, right, evolve, right? This is literally how the sausage is made, right? It's like a bunch of energy, some people collaborating, put a bit of focus here, go and work over there, and then come back a couple of months and present it, right?
Usually this happens with a bunch of people sitting together in person somewhere, either in a bar or in a place that serves coffee.
Exactly.
But then it's much harder to quickly grab Spiros and say, hey, you're doing this thing, help us talk. This is much better.
Yeah.
This is why we need to make sure these things also happen virtual and in-person type style.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Cool.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, good stuff. Well, I think we can end it a little bit earlier, because I think there's no point of doing more mappings, because I think the next step is to do the mappings on the, what's it called? Like on the actual YAML files, right? So the success story here, if you can do this thing again, and then go to the YAML file, go to the repo, send a pull request, approve the pull request, and then within a couple of minutes or seconds, see the visualization done, right? In the graph.
So what we could do, Dinis, is create the sample YAML for one of the things. I'm thinking literally just project name and then a list of the flags.
Let me dig into my branches. I think I might have this.
Yeah. So the thing to do this, and I've done this before, right, is that let's not hit a lot of projects in one go. You almost create a folder per project, right, in your test environment, and you put the sample YAML in that folder, so we can use it to iterate very fast. And then almost like the first thing, well, one of the main things to get is that full DevOps cycle, but also to kind of agree on the schema. And then we can go to people and say, hey, start adding. In fact, we can send the pull requests to the projects, right?
Yeah.
But let's not involve tons of projects to start with. Let's just use that repo that you have, right? And then experiment on the definition of the schema, because I definitely think we need to go a level down for some of the characterizations of the projects.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Good stuff. All right. Any final comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's just important to tell people that they can always go to owas.org/projects and check out all the projects. Of course, we've done the mapping for the flagship ones, right, Dinis? But there are over 150 other projects. And as you said, there are so many new ones that it's difficult to keep track of. And I think one thing to note is that different projects might be a different state of maturity, and also depends on how well they're maintained and collaborated. And this is why it's quite important to make sure that people are aware that they can become collaborators and help us out, just like we now asking for people to collaborate on the integration project.
Those are all attributes that should be included in the graph.
Yes. Where will it fit in a graph then? Is it under what?
Yeah, so look.
Under what section? So this is not test. This is not. I think is it design?
Which one? Sorry.
I think well, we're talking about recursion now. The project that we're talking about, which is the integration standards, the YAML file. We need to place it on the diagram as well, and that's a good question. Where does it fit?
Oh, the plan. One of them, planning, right? To understand what exists, right there, right? And this is one of those where the most important thing now is to get to the feedback loop, right? Is get to the point where we can see it and going, well, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't make sense. In fact, that's when you almost want to go to the users and saying, does this make sense, right? Like when you think of planning, when you think of build, when you think of deploy, and maybe here's a definition and here's the categories, it's almost like we actually want to go to the subject matter experts and saying, does this make sense? Like, is this useful for you? Because the other thing that's interesting is to then get feedback where it actually is used. Because, for example, we might think that Zap is used in these 4 places. It might turn around that it's never used over here, but it's only used here. Maybe it's going to use a lot on this stage. So actually, if you think about it, all we're doing is a first mapping, and then we should actually let the community almost tell us where it's being used, in what stage is actually being used, and then use that to feed the graph, right?
Yeah.
And what you were talking about, Sam, about the different levels, it's almost about, I want to see a view where I only see the flagship products, but then I might go, okay, but I'm actually looking for something else. Show me more details. And then maybe I want to say, actually, show me everything on this project. And then it's very important, again, to show the level of quality, but there's a big difference between there's nothing, then there is something there. And I actually think that the power of OWASP is the level that is always sometimes a step ahead on a research, where you might have a project that is actually not flagship, or even maybe a labs, but it might be the best project in the world on that topic, right?
Exactly. This is what's cool about OWASP and OWASP projects. You just need to explore and just find them. Because the catalog of projects is growing, I think we now reached the state when we need to categorize them and provide the useful visualization and the mechanism for people to filter it based on what they want, maturity, quality, I don't know, last contribution.
Yeah, all of that.
Different criteria.
Cool. Good stuff. See, it's always good that something comes out of these ideas. All right, so we got a plan. We're going to come back next month. So next month, I'll actually say let's do a session exactly on the OWASP project integrations project, right? And then see where we are and see if we can get some energy around it and some DevOps loops and some graphs. See, and I'll be there because if you put something with graphs, that's that's the best. That's the best way to get me involved. Right, brilliant. Well, thanks for everybody's time. And I see you, well, there's a bunch of other sessions, by the way, still on the summit, if you guys are interested. Actually tonight, I got an email with Jim Manico. It's bound to be interesting. I got some nice questions.
Oh, this is unmissable.
That's going to be interesting. There's some interesting hot topics to talk about. So, and Jim has also very strong opinions.
I will watch the sparks fly on Twitter and then catch up later.
All right, everybody, go stop recording.
Cheers.